It's my absolute pleasure to be able to welcome Irish nurse and president of the International Council of Nurses, Annette Kennedy.
Thank you. And thank you for the invite. It's lovely to be here with my favorite group, which are the students, now to become graduates. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself first, and then a little bit about the organization that I represent. And then finally, some tips that came through to myself during my period of student, staff nurse, and ongoing, and from listening to other students. Anyway, congratulations on getting this far. It's been a tough year and a half for you, tough year and a half for every nurse throughout the world. I suppose to just explain what my role is, I'm president of the International Council of Nurses, and the International Council of Nurses is an organization representing national nurses associations in 140 countries worldwide, 27 million nurses. It's the largest and most far-reaching organization in the world. It was founded in 1899 by a few very visionary nurses who weren't thinking about nursing, but they were thinking about the rights of workers, the rights of women, particularly getting the vote, getting education, and being able to work and being able to have, a vocation or profession. So they started up with the idea that it would be good to have a collaboration between nurses around the world in order to elevate the profession, to make it a profession, to improve the standards of education, to promote the conditions of employment, and to lobby at the very highest level, and that's global level, with the World Health Organization, the International Labour Organization, the United Nations, all those organizations that you now hear tell of and that kind of pass over your eyes and you kind of say nothing to do with us, but it has a lot, and I'll tell you a little bit later. For myself, I started out, if you were to ask me, did I ever envisage myself being in this role? The answer would be no. Did I ever have an ambition to be president? The answer is definitely no. Did I want to be a nurse? Not particularly, no, I didn't. But at the time that I went into nursing, there was very few choices for women and men, but very few choices, particularly for women. And the choices related to four main areas. And that was the religious life, secretarial work, which could be bank and it could be admin and civil service or anywhere. It was teaching and nursing. If you came from the west of Ireland, and I came from a small farming background, it was difficult to access university education because it was expensive. Even secondary school education was not free at the time. So the choices were limited. So I decided on nursing. My sister, who was a nurse, said that I would never make a nurse, because all I would do is read books and, the patient could collapse beside me and I wouldn't even dream of going near him. So that was her, I suppose, advice and support for me. So, but anyway, I became a nurse in the old Richmond, which is the Irish Nurses and Midwives organization now. And I knew the Richmond and the Whitworth and the Hardwick very well. So it was strange that I started there and I finished there. So I went on from being a student to go on to do midwifery. At the time you had to do midwifery because it was nearly mandatory to have midwifery if you wanted to work down the country, if you wanted to work in public health. So it wasn't that you wanted to do midwifery, it's that, you didn't have a choice. So I did midwifery, didn't stay long in it. I did that in England and came back. And then after a stint in agency, I eventually went back to the Richmond and worked in intensive care, loved intensive care. And that's what I would suggest to you. There are so many areas of work now, and I'm delighted to see that nurses from different specialty areas are going to speak to you. It's not that you need to talk about your career pathway for the future. It will come. I didn't have a career pathway. I don't know if I still had one, You know, later on in life, I probably didn't. Things happen and you go with them. So there are so many areas within clinical nursing that you can do now that you never could do before. There's something for everyone. And there's some things that you won't like. I went into teaching. Teaching was not for me. Midwifery was probably not for me either. Intensive care and neurointensive care was for me. So I went from there to set up the first neurointensive care unit in the Richmond at that time. And from there, the director of nursing said to me, would you like a break? Because she knew I was going to leave. So I said, where am I going? She said, to college. So I thought, oh, that's not a bad idea. So I went for 3 years to do the tutors course. But then, of course, teaching, I think I was boring myself. So I figured that if I was boring myself, I was boring the students too. So I thought it's time to get out of there. Love the students. Students are so enthusiastic. They are, you know, just open to learning everything. They're so cheerful. They want to do everything. And that's the great thing. It keeps you young, it keeps you active, it keeps you interested, and never lose that enthusiasm. It's great. So then from there, I went to the Irish Nurses and Midwife Organisation. And I've heard Catherine speak about the Irish Nurses and Midwives Organisation. And I have to say, from my experience over the last 8 years, it's probably one of the strongest nursing organizations in the world. And it's very much leading the way. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of having worked there and set up the Professional Development Centre and then got involved in international work. So I would say that there are many, many organizations throughout the world would probably give their right hand to have a strong organization like you have. You know, sometimes I know that you will have issues and nothing is perfect. And over the last 2 years, it's been extremely difficult, but extremely difficult the world over. But be proud of your organization. The organization is only as strong as its members. And the more unity you have in membership, the better and the stronger your organization is. But it has done great things for promoting nursing throughout the 20, 30, 40 years. Anyway, from there, I was irritated with what was happening at global level. I thought that nurses should be more visible. I thought the organization, the International Council of Nurses, should be more visible, being the large organization it was. So I decided to run for election and I became vice president, and that's 4 years. And then, you know, I suppose before that I had been president of the European Federation of Nurses. So I had experience on the international level, but it wasn't something that I went to, that I had intentions of running. By the time I had done 4 years as vice president, I said, that's it, I'm out. And I was persuaded, strongly persuaded, to go for president. But even at that time, I thought, oh, there'll be other people that will want the job, so hopefully I won't get it. But I did. It's been a tough 4 years. It's been challenging. We have changed the organization dramatically. We have made it more visible in the media right across the world with BBC, World News, you know, Euronews, all of those media, particularly during COVID. And that has helped to increase the profile of nurses dramatically. And I'm very proud of that. It also, we work very closely with the World Health Organization. And I'm sure you've seen from time to time Dr. Tedros on the news speaking about COVID and the difficulties. And over the time period, we worked with our associations very closely, seeking that there would be support for nurses, seeking that they would have PPEs. And in some countries still, they don't have adequate PPEs, seeking that they would have testing and tracing, seeking that we would collect information on the deaths. And let me tell you that across the world, that there are 1,500 nurses, not nurses, healthcare workers who have died over the period of COVID. That's 200 healthcare workers a day. 60% of those will be nurses. And the number of people that have become infected with COVID is around 2 million healthcare workers. 10% of those will have long-term COVID, and that's very serious. We're already short of nurses worldwide, and this is our challenge. And when you wonder what the value is of international work, the value of international work is like this. We collected with the World Health Organization and with Nursing Now information on 191 countries, the State of the World's Nursing Report, which came out in April. That will be put into a strategy, and governments throughout the world agreed to implement that strategy. The real issue is calling those governments to account to implement the strategy, which talks about investment, talks about better conditions for nurses, talks about education, advanced practice, nurses being involved in leadership and policy design, all of that. And we feed the information across the world to all our associations and then work with them to try and improve the conditions and the building capacity of nurses. So in case you think that, you know, we're out there, it has nothing to do with you, it has, big time it has nothing, because our governments make decisions with large bodies like Global 20, which is 20 of the major countries. And we've seen now, particularly, that the vaccination has been rolled out in the major big countries, but the small countries, those lower income countries like Africa, places in Africa, haven't even got a vaccine yet. And many of our nurses will die in those countries through lack of vaccination and through lack of, you know, protection. And that's not right. It is not right by any standard of the imagination. So let me get to a couple of tips for you, because I've given you enough about the world, the global world, which I hope that you will get involved in at some stage. I know in my career, I didn't even know what it was about until much later, but it's good to have young people, and we're having now young people at our Congress in November and at our CNR in October. I want very much to develop a students network and a young nurses network. I think it's so important that you relate to each other across the world and you learn from each other. So what do I say about tips for you? And I was trying to think about tips for you. So I'm proud to be a nurse. I'm proud to be head of the International Nurses Organization, the first time an Irish nurse has been there. But if I talk to you, a couple of tips. One is your choice of where you're going. You won't have a choice in the first year or two, I imagine that. But after that, have a look around and see what would suit you best. You won't like every area, that's for sure. But there will be some area that you will like. And do ask to get experience in a different area. It's very important that you're happy wherever you are. If you're not happy, do not be there. You will make your life miserable for you, miserable for your colleagues, and miserable for your patients. You will be anxious and you will be nervous. There's no doubt about that. But try and learn certain things like the major events that might happen, cardiac respiratory arrest. Those are the ones that really create havoc when they happen. And everybody starts rushing, and you'll be the runaround. They'll be asking you to get various things. Make yourself familiar with the ward you're on. Make yourself familiar with what is used in the emergency situation. What are they looking for? What are the drugs they were looking for that you might be asked to look for? Endotracheal tubes, the sizes and everything else like that. And they'll be asking you to look for it. Maybe you're familiar with them already, but if you're not, think about it. The other things is make sure you have a lot of knowledge now that you have gained through the school and for your exams and everything else like that. But make sure you know just the very basic symptoms of the major conditions, like hemorrhage, like intracranial pressure, like pulmonary embolus, like diabetes or diabetic coma, like those kind of things, status epilepticus, those kind of things that happen and that you get frightened. And if you know what the symptoms are and how to deal with them, not everything, you can't know everything. And I would suggest the patients will be asking you questions, but the patients know more about their condition than you will ever know, because Dr. Google is very busy right now and they will be looking up Dr. Google. Don't be afraid to say you don't know. Don't be afraid to say, I will find out for you. it is very important. You will not know everything. You don't have to know everything. Even today, I am not uncomfortable in saying, I don't know what you're talking about. So make sure that you do ask questions. Sometimes people will feel uncomfortable giving you answers, particularly probably more experienced nurses, because they will have lots of experience and information, but what they will be nervous about is that you have just come from theory and that you may know more or more up-to-date information. So forgive them for that. You can always look it up. There is no problem. Get somebody that's, good and that will, look after you. A mentor. Look at a nurse that you think is a good nurse, a nurse that you would like to be, and model yourself on those. That's very important. And see, what are the attributes that they have that you would like to have? They will expect you to be efficient and effective, and they will expect you to be time-oriented. You can't. Be kind to yourself. You cannot be that, you're only in there. If somebody gives out to you, for goodness sake, a lot of the times they're under pressure, they're under stress, and they sometimes take it out on the youngest and the most inexperienced. But always smile, smile. It's very hard to give out to somebody who's smiling. And it's very hard to give out to somebody saying that I'm doing my best. I'm really trying. I would like some help. It is extremely difficult. Don't get upset. Don't get on the defensive. Don't do anything like that. That'll only make things worse for you. Always, always smile. They find it very hard to give out to somebody that smiles. Put yourself in the patient's shoes. You will never go wrong if you put yourself in the patient's shoes. How would I like to be looked after if I was there? And the most thing, right throughout COVID, the year and a half, what we have heard back from people and what has been written is that patients have been more, they have, the experience they've had with compassion and care is what they have spoken about. People writing to their relatives, nurses writing to their relatives, nurses trying to communicate with their relatives, nurses writing down what happened while they were ill, keeping little diaries and telling them afterwards how every day went and who came and who went, and just notes. And they're so grateful for that. Making memory boxes for patients who died. It's the small things that count. It really, really is the small things that count. You can be the most efficient and most skilled nurse in the world, but without compassion, there is nothing. Prioritizing and time management. People will expect that. It's not possible. It's not possible when you're young and new and everything else. And don't be hard on yourself. For goodness sake, don't be hard on yourself. Nursing is not always like the textbook. It never is like the textbook. So be prepared. You will be anxious and you will be worried, but your health is as important as the patient's health. And don't be afraid to say that you are stressed, that you need a break. Do not be afraid to say that. It might take you time, but it's so important. Nurses tend to think more about the patient and the relatives and everybody else than their own health, their own physical and mental health. Enjoy. If you don't enjoy the experience, you spend too long in it, not to enjoy it and to try and get as much knowledge. Listen to everybody. Listen as much as you can. I learn every day. I learn more from you as young nurses and students than I do from anybody else. Get involved with groups outside nursing, because we become insular when we just talk to our friends, when we just get involved in nursing organizations and that. That's not to say that I wouldn't suggest that you get involved in the INMO, I would, but get involved in other organizations. You learn other things, and it takes your mind off your own work. And in the words of Greta Thunberg, that little girl that brought climate action to everybody, to all of society. And she said, you're never too small to make a difference. And she has shown that. So I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much, and sorry for taking up so much of your time. I tend to talk, so the best of luck, and I hope I'll see you soon.
John. I'm sure nobody here will scorn you for the extra few minutes of wisdom. Your words, they resonate with me as a second year undergraduate, and I'm sure for our new graduates or soon to be new graduates, they're gonna really, really stick with them.